Holy cow, it got cold. It must be December. But I'm here for it, friends, because seasons are good. Are you with me? And honestly, that's a lot of what we're talking about today, and getting into what it means to live into this, at least where I'm at, dark, cold season. And the other name we know for this particular season that we're in right now is Advent. Welcome, friends, back to the ecoChristian podcast, where we're exploring what it means to be Christian on this planet called Earth. I'm your host, Caleb Cray Haynes. And speaking of seasons, I just got to say, there's this one Bible verse. Some folks just love to quote this one Bible verse, and especially whenever they're confronted with the conversation around our changing climate. And it's all the way back early Genesis, okay? And some of you already know what I'm talking about. And it's after Noah and his family leaves the ark, and it goes like this. All right, Genesis 8:22. While the earth remaineth seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And yes, friends, that was the KJV, because so many of those folks quoting that to me are always in their KJV, and I'm not throwing a lot of shade there, but there's a little bit of shade on the KJV because we don't speak it that way anymore. And so what are we doing here? Anyway, but without getting into scripture genres, understanding the Noah narrative, ecological readings of scripture, or anything else, let me just throw this in here to say, totally free of charge, for no other reason except that it's bugging me. Climate change does not and will not stop the seasons from changing. We will continue to have spring. We will continue to have summer, fall, winter. The earth will continue rotating around the sun. But what is changing are the ways in which these seasons are behaving, and what the rest of creation is doing within these continually odd behaving seasons. We could go on, but I don't know why it just came to me. So folks, I love you, but we gotta leave that verse where it lies. And okay, you never know what's gonna hit you. Friends, I'm so excited to be joined today by Gayle Boss, and she is the author of this wonderful little Advent book called All Creation Waits, and it's real good. So our chat is just a really wonderful talk, and I just like to say, I know we're a few days into Advent, depending on when you're listening to this. It's not too late. Grab this book. It's a great little book. There's 24 reflections, 25 reflections, but 24 animals that are honed in on, and Gayle is just very poetic, and the whole thing is very rich. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Also, again, around the corner is the launch of my new book, Earthbound Christian: Flourishing Within Limits in the Age of Infinite Growth. Friends, I'm so pumped for that. So stay tuned for that. It's coming around the bend. And also, I'll add, last week the fam went to see Wicked for Good, and y'all, their tears were involved, laughter, general merriment. It really was. It was really good, and I really loved it. And so much so that I wrote a brief ecological review of the film, and you can find it on the Substacks, the ecoChristian Outpost, as we call it. And you can check it out in the show notes below. Yeah, so I'm so excited to share this conversation with author Gayle Boss. Okay, wonderful friends. Today I'm with my new friend Gayle Boss, who is coming to us from Michigan, where she was born and raised, and her lifelong love of animals and her immersion in spiritual texts and practices meld in writing that explores how relationships with animals specifically and an attentive presence in the natural world generally restore us to our deepest selves. So good. And I see that you also are the author of Wild Hope, Stories for Lent from the Vanishing. So I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get my hands on that now. So I'm excited to have you with us today, Gayle.
Caleb, it's such a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, so good. Now we're just kind of catching up, and you're already we're already in Advent right now. We're a couple days in as of this conversation. But I recently, late to the party, discovering your book, All Creation Waits, and I was so excited to kind of stumble across that with our friends Arasha doing that study and some others. So that's been really cool to see. So I'd like to kind of talk about Advent and some of these other things. But maybe before we get into all that, I'd love to hear a little bit more around your Christian background and sort of how you fell into this work around Advent and animals. So
It's a lot of ground to cover.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
try
We can
to,
meander in. Yeah.
yeah, I'll give you the shorthand version, I hope. I grew up in northern Michigan in a Calvinist tradition, the Reformed Church in America, founded by Dutch immigrants. It's a mainline denomination, really, quite similar to Presbyterianism. All that, though, to say that I grew up in a church, but it was not at the time liturgical. So I didn't even know the word Advent. Northern Michigan, however, did give me an upbringing that was out in the woods. My grandparents owned a couple hundred acres of wooded land, and a lot of our Sunday afternoons were spent tromping through the woods, hunting mushrooms in the spring and wildflowers in the summer, and looking for nuts in the fall. So my father was quite an accomplished woodsman and taught us a lot of things about where to recognize the growing places of mushrooms, animal tracks. So I did grow up out in
Wow.
the woods and did grow up with a rather mainline religious background that I was very fond of. I didn't have any rebellion against it. I loved going to church. Um, but I did feel growing up in late November as the sky got dark and the weather got cold. It's very damp and cold, and usually there's snow on the ground by Thanksgiving in northern Michigan. I felt the kind of weight of the climate closing in around me. I remember feeling like there was a wet blanket of ash on my shoulders starting in mid to late November. And I really entered a kind of seasonal depression, which was made more confusing to me because voices of all kinds all around me were singing, "It's the most wonderful time." And I was thinking, really, no, it's not. Everything is dark and gray and
Hmm.
dying. But because nobody else was saying that, and I didn't really have the words to articulate what was happening in my body, I just felt something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Well, after college in Southwest Michigan, I married and went to Washington, D.C. with my husband, which is a city not as cold as Northern Michigan, but has its share of November gloom too. And one year, 1985, as that November gloom was descending upon me again that year, I was providentially given a writing assignment to explore the roots of the Advent liturgy in the Christian church. I didn't even know the word Advent. So I took myself to the library, the stacks of the Catholic University of America library, and I went about investigating first what Advent meant, and then second, its historical roots. And I discovered in a very dusty tome, in a very dusty stack of old books, a few paragraphs that changed my life. Those paragraphs made the cylinders of a little lock inside me all line up. And then I can still remember the click when that lock popped open inside me, because I learned, in learning the historical roots of Advent, I understood my seasonal depression, and I learned there was something that I could do about it. I learned that Advent was not celebrated until the year 330 AD, because Christmas wasn't celebrated until the year 330 AD in the Christian church. Because, after all, the Gospels don't give us a date on the calendar for the birth of Jesus. Leaders of the early church simply decided to assign Jesus the birthday of December 25th. Well, I thought, why not February 2nd? Why not August 13th? Why not any other day? Why December 25th? And I learned that they chose December 25th because that was the day in the Julian calendar, which was the calendar in use in the early centuries of this millennium. Instead of the Gregorian calendar, which we use now, in the Julian calendar, the winter solstice was December 25th, not December 21st. And the winter solstice, December 25th, in the Julian calendar, was the end of a week-long festival and debauchery, really, that the Roman era called Saturnalia. It was a great feast where everybody just pulled out all of the stops. And Christian leaders were not prudes exactly, but they did see these festivals as fun maybe for a time, but unhelpful, a kind of expensive disappointment in the end. They wanted to say to their faithful people, the members of the churches who were surrounded by these festivals, we want to use this time of year to celebrate the birth of the true light, that thing which really gives us new life and hope. And so we are going to institute on the day that Saturnalia is ending, the celebration of the birth of the one true light. And we're going to have 4 weeks of preparation, Advent, to get us ready for that date, Christmas. Yeah. But then that begs the question, why was December 25th, the winter solstice, why was that the occasion for such a feast in these ancient societies, Saturnalia? Why did it land then? And what I learned, and this is what explained my seasonal depression, was that in this ancient world, they depended on the earth in a way that we can barely manage to imagine. If you didn't grow it, you didn't eat it. If you didn't grow enough of it, you wouldn't be eating come February. And even if you did grow enough of it, what if there was no growing season next year? So the end of the growing season, late fall, November, early December, when the sun is leaving the sky and all the vegetable and animal life looks as if it's dying, that engendered in people this kind of visceral bodily fear. Oh no, what if the sun doesn't come back and there's no growing season and there's no food? How will we survive? So they dealt with that kind of visceral fear with what the Scottish anthropologist Sir James Frazer once called sympathetic magic. The idea was that if they lit big bonfires on tall hills and torches, if they lit big lights, many lights, they could call back the light. And if they feasted, acting as if there was abundance, then they would bring back abundance in the year to come, the growing season to come. And if they engaged in kind of ceaseless activity, then they could ensure the return of robust animal activity in the year to come. So ceaseless activity of the human animal might call back robust activity of the animal world. So feasting and lots of lights and ceaseless activity, extravagance of all kinds, that was their way to sort of engineer the return of life, including the return of the sun. Well, the church leaders said, that's not how true life returns to us. It returns to us when we acknowledge the birth of the one who is the light of the world. And we prepare for that, not with feasting and lights and activity, but with fasting, prayer, and giving alms, giving away. We fast rather than feast, not out of gloom and doom, but as a way of honing our hunger for that which really satisfies. And we pray rather than have great parties, not in a rejection of festivity or camaraderie, but as a way to quiet and center our hearts. And so we can hear what Jesus called the one thing needful. And we give away rather than accumulating, because we need to make room in our hearts and in our lives, in the clutter of our lives, for the true gift of true life. And then the genius, so then we're getting to how this cured my seasonal depression.
Yeah, okay.
The genius of all of this, to me, fasting, praying, and giving away, was that the church leaders were suggesting these activities that allow humans to mimic or mirror what the natural world is doing in this time of year. The whole natural world is stripping down. Trees lose their leaves, they stop their growing juices, animals crawl down into the earth. Some of them look as good as dead, but they slow all of their rhythms. And that's what fasting, praying, and giving away allow humans to do too, to mirror in our bodies of earth what the earth is doing. In other words, we're tuning in to the earth of our bodies by mirroring what the earth around us is doing. We're acknowledging that we're made of earth and we need to be in sync with the earth. So when we don't do that, as I didn't all through childhood and my growing up, we're out. Our bodies know that we're out of rhythm. And no matter how much we want to deny it, somewhere deep within us, we know that we're out of rhythm. And I think that's what I knew, even as a child of 10 or 11, that I was out of harmony, out of sync. And so from that year on, 1985 on, my husband and I began to celebrate not a Christmas countdown, but a true historical, biological advent of quiet waiting in the dark. All the decorations and lights stayed in the boxes. We had just an Advent wreath where we sang each evening, O come, Emmanuel. And then we pulled out all the stops on Christmas Eve and lit the lights and the tree and the decorations. We went to church, had a great party the following day. Yeah. And then for 12 days, we celebrated the 12 days of Christmas.
Yes. Oh, man. So good. There's so much there. I feel like we just got like a free history lesson here on Advent, and there's so much there. And I really appreciate how you obviously, you're describing how it connected with you and your body and your spirit, and you talked how the cogs kind of clinked into place, and obviously this is a really strong thread for you in your life. And so I really appreciate you sharing that and all the research and intentionality that's gone into you learning all of this. And I think that this is really big fruit, I feel like, for so many of us in many different Christian traditions who have been a little, I'm going to say, liturgically impoverished to some degree. Not in any sort of sinister way, but just we're sort of missing a lot of the rich historical roots that brought about these traditions along the way, which is kind of only given culture a little bit more of a chance to dig its claws into our traditions. And I'm going to say syncretize the Frosty the Snowman into what was originally holy ground, maybe. And so, yeah, I have so many thoughts and questions there, I feel like. But yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And it does bring to mind as well. I think sometimes people hear the roots of some of these traditions, and you realize that so many of the things that reflect what we do liturgically within the church comes from these different, I'm going to say, quote unquote, pagan roots or something like this, right? Where at one point, an ecclesial body interacted with what's happening culturally, and these traditions formed. Same with, right, All Saints Day existing on November 1st like it does, right? This is sort of the church doing kind of the same thing. And you could, obviously, we could talk about Easter and resurrection and all that, but, rather than God coming out of the clouds and saying like, these 3 weeks are going to be Advent, y'all. And it's, of course, it doesn't work that way, right? And so it's so cool to sort of take a beat and take a moment and remember, oh no, like we're actually being really intentional as Christian people about this circular story that is the Christian calendar and this Christian calendar year, and living that story. Anyway, sorry, I'm randomly just preaching to the choir right now. You got me all worked up in your story, so I really I appreciate it. Yeah, I want to get into some of those pieces, but I want to back up a little bit and talk maybe from, at a little bit more of a high level for a minute around, one of the things I think that's so encouraging from your story is, I feel like you're one of the few others I know who has gone to great lengths to actually participate in Advent with your kids. And you kind of talk about that. I've heard, and as a parent of young children, this has really been tough, I would say, for my wife and I over the years. I mean, very rich experience, but also very difficult to practice Advent because so many of our kids, friends that they're around in school, right, along with just mainstream culture around Christmas is just so explosive with movies and lights and ads and every single restaurant or store that you walk into. It's just unavoidable. And anyway, I wonder if you talk about that for a minute around your experience as a parent and how you kind of learned as you went with some of that.
Yeah, thank you. Doug's and my celebration of Advent was going swimmingly, a true Advent, until we had a child.
Yeah.
And that child came home one day from his friend's house and he said, "Mom, how come Evan's house is all Christmassy and ours is dark and quiet?" And he had that kind of discontent that your kids feel when they walk into the mall and all their friends are shouting about Christmas presents and the next photo with Santa and all of that. We tried explaining to him that we were waiting with the earth and all creation, and it just wasn't selling to a 4-year-old, a busy 4-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right, we have to do something to make this waiting with the earth theme more compelling. Well, let's start with an Advent calendar. Let's see how that might help us. Well, in 1995, when I was looking for an Advent calendar for my first son, there were basically two kinds. There were the kind that had pictures of candy canes and presents and Rudolph on the little doors. And there were the kind that pictured the cast of the Nativity on the little doors, which thoroughly frustrated me because I saw, with knowing what I now knew about the history of Advent, that those were pictures of Christmas, not Advent. They were Christmas calendars, not Advent calendars. So I thought, all right, I have no choice. I have to make my own Advent calendar. So I set about making my own Advent calendar, and it is all black. If you could see it, it's in the shape of a great barn, and I covered the front of it with a beautiful handmade paper that's all black, but with gold threads running through it. And I cut out the little doors, and behind door number 1, I drew a picture of a painted turtle buried in the mud. Now, the reason I put a turtle behind door number 1 was that, again, providentially, my son's godmother and my best friend, just days before I started making this calendar, sent me her reflection on turtle. She said, you know, when a healthy soul, is facing a harsh season of its life, sometimes that soul just has to absent itself and, like turtle, go down and be buried in the mud to recover in a deep, quiet place. And I thought, beautiful, perfect. A turtle can be the perfect symbol on our Advent calendar for what a healthy person, a healthy soul does in this season of dark and cold. It draws inward and it waits. It's waiting for the light and for the warmth. And I drew a picture of a turtle because my little boy loved pictures of animals. Well, after the turtle, other animals started queuing up to be on the calendar. There was a black bear, a loon, a diamond-skinned snake, a raven, a white-tailed deer. All of them became for me symbols of what a healthy soul, how a healthy soul responds to a season of dark and cold, which Advent is. It's the death of the year, the end of the year. It's that season of waiting, desperately waiting for the light to return to us. And my kids have loved that calendar. It really allowed us to enter Advent in a true way. They didn't clamor for decorating the house or the tree or playing Christmas music or any of that. In fact, and we have a couple of other traditions too. We had a Jesse tree that walks kids through the story of the biblical characters, Jesus's family tree, essentially, leading up to the birth. We had traditions like that, but especially the Advent calendar and the Advent wreath at the center of it. And they loved those traditions so much that they would bring their friends home to see this weird pre-Christmas celebration. It made them stand out as different from their friends. And they took great delight in having this unusual identity.
Oh, man. I love hearing that. Kudos to rising to the occasion as a parent. I think that is a big part of the challenge, is just us taking a beat and channeling some creativity around this. And there's obviously no one size fits all with parenting, and each family is challenged with their own set of things and trying to mitigate cultural chaos while being intentional with our time and space and energy and money and all the things. But I just, that's really encouraging to hear, and I definitely am really drawn to any sort of craft like that we can do together or create or engage. Especially, and obviously listeners may not have kids or whatever, but it's not, it's like you can do all of these things as adults, and it's just as meaningful for sure. And we're in the middle of creating boxes and whatnot just this weekend in our house as well, that we kind of open every day through Advent. But anyway, what's striking is we're in this time, really in the arc of human history, really for the first time we're in this place, and I feel like it's kind of where you're going with this book is, historically as humans, we would have found ourselves, I'm going to say it kind of metaphorically, within this, within creation, within these barn doors of animals, right, that you've created. Like we are in the barn, with all the animals. We're out there with creation, but now for the first time we're having to say, well, okay, well, how can we bring all the animals in here with us, or how can we, you know what I'm saying? Like, how can we how can we engage in creation even though we've lifted up all of these barriers that continually exist between us and creation, and us in these seasons, right? From moving from this climate controlled space to that climate controlled space, and still somehow griping about how cold it is or how hot it is, even though we're just constantly overcoming these boundaries and limitations. And so anyway, it was funny because just this last week with Thanksgiving, we were at my parents' house, and I grew up, which I later realized was a little unique to my Christian tradition, but we did grow up lighting the candles and stuff at church on Sundays through Advent. But as far as our home life, we always kind of put the tree up the day after Thanksgiving. It was like Thanksgiving was over. Okay, lanes are clear. Go for launch, and Mariah Carey hit, and we just did the thing. Anyway, but for the last 15 years, in our little family here with our two little girls who are 10 and 12, we've done things pretty differently from that. And anyway, we were just at my parents' house, and it was the day after Thanksgiving, and my mom was going to get their help putting up the tree, and my oldest daughter was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing, Grandma? Like, it's only the day after Thanksgiving. You're getting your tree out, and it was kind of a funny little proud moment for me of seeing my daughter, who has been a little definitely shaped around the Christian calendar. And obviously, as she goes about her life, she's going to find out how weird that is, probably compared to everyone else. But yeah, I think these are muscles, that we're I think helping our kids shape how they see and exist in the world, and that's really cool. Kind of moving into some of the other things that you're bringing about that we're kind of getting into, but especially around seasonal depression. I love how you're framing that, because I think that that's something that thinking about our distance from creation and closing that gap this season, and the animals being our teachers. And I wonder if you'd say a little bit more about that, and maybe our journey of navigating that tension of learning from creation around us, but also living in these kind of separate spaces. Does that make sense?
Say just a little more for me.
Yeah, I guess maybe more of how you or your family has navigated some of that within your community or within your church. Has your church, or maybe have you experienced this sort of with your church body a little bit more of celebrating Advent this way? And has there been any kind of tension there?
Yeah, I'll take it back one step to where I thought you were going, and then address the community side of that in a minute. I think that if we don't acknowledge that our bodies are doing what the earth is doing, if we resist it with the holiday season, the most wonderful time of the year, and become more busy when our bodies are clamoring to be less busy and to rest, we invite the disruption, dis-ease, disease upon ourselves. And that's why so many people do have a seasonal depression this time of year. There's nothing inherent in it. It's simply that, and I'm talking about seasonal depression. I'm not talking about a clinical depression here. If we acknowledge what our earth-made bodies are feeling and wanting because they are of the earth, and if we move with them, we won't find ourselves overwhelmed and weighted by the resistance, by the feelings that resistance brings about. And then, but if we do try to resist, if we tried to do what I did for this first 26, 27 years of my life, which is to participate in the frenzy of the holiday season, then not only do we throw our bodies into disruption and dis-ease, But we also, in the process, become easy prey for the marketplace, which is trying to distract us from every direction with these costly disappointments because they can never satisfy us. All of the gift giving and party throwing and all of that. I'm not an antisocial person at all, but I do think the overreaction is based in fear. It's not, it's the fear of those ancient people. What we're doing in a modern sense with the holiday season is simply acting out the same impulse of fear that possessed those early agricultural people who were afraid for their survival if there were to be no growing season, if the sun didn't return. It's all based in fear. So we don't lash out against that fear with this frenzied activity. We'll find ourselves, I think I'm not alone in this, we'll find ourselves in a place of, when we slow down with our bodies, a place of contentment, a place of rest.
Yeah.
As for the community aspect, what I find in the church in the last 10 years since the book came out is there's a growing interest in Advent and the rhythms of Advent, but I don't find many people able to translate it into their family lives and in their cultural lives. They go to church and we acknowledge the lighting of the candle, the waiting in the dark for the light of the world, the quiet. But then we step out and we head to the mall that on Sunday afternoon to pick up that last minute white stocking stuffer for the office Christmas party or something. We're not able quite, I don't think, to translate it. And I'm hoping with the book, I'm hoping that the book, by tuning us in to the amazingness, the wonder, and the awe of the animals, common animals of the northern woodlands this time of year, that are a wonder and our amazement, and help us adopt those slowed down rhythms in a way perhaps that church liturgy alone can't. So if I'm looking at the chickadees outside my window right now at my bird feeder, and I'm knowing what I know from All Creation Waits, the book, about how they have to eat during the daylight hours enough calories to get them through a cold night, and that's hard to do. They have to remember where they've stashed one of their 5,000 or 6,000 seeds that they've stashed throughout the summer and the fall just to survive. And that they don't behave as if that is an imposition. They behave as if being wed to Lady Poverty is a joy, like St. Francis. Then somehow I'm able to participate a little more deeply with my chickadee neighbors and with myself. Do you know what I'm saying? That somehow the animals give us a community to which to belong, in which the Advent rhythms become easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for navigating that. I had two questions and they were not separating themselves very well. Yeah. And you back to the fear. I feel like that's something that, I think you're naming that well, and I think that one of those sort of boundaries that we're constantly trying to overcome, we do that through busyness, right? We think if we can, and I don't even really think we're thinking about it. We're just doing it. Because we're swimming in it. It is our culture, and unfortunately, this is probably the busiest time of the year for so many people, rather than the slowest, which is what the so many of these animals are teaching us, or trying to remind us, I suppose, is that hey, it's okay to slow down. Like, it's okay that
Right, it's healthy. It's sanity giving. It restores our life force.
yeah, exactly. It's literally the opposite. It's like it's life giving,
Yeah.
and Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that I'm going to say maybe subconsciously, there's so much going on there. I'm going to say particularly for people in the West or Americans. Um, and it's kind of a whole nother soapbox, but I think about this a lot around the topic of death and pain and how much we are just ill-equipped, even in the church often, of really wrestling with it and talking about it and experiencing grief. I'm going to say correctly, and that sort of avoidance, and I can't help but think, as you're sort of mentioning, that the way that we quote unquote do the holidays or do Christmas is another form of that.
People say to me that the book works equally well as a book for grief support groups as it does for groups marking Advent, because grief is another harsh season of the soul. It's a dark, cold season for the soul. And so these animals can also serve as our models for different ways to restore our souls when we're facing the dark, cold season of grief, even though it might come in July.
Wow, that's really fascinating to hear. Yeah, and it also makes me think about like the content. I'm going to say the contemplatives. Yeah, maybe wouldn't call the way that most people quote do Christmas as a means of just avoiding true presence, which I think is kind of maybe another layer underneath, or another way to say it is how we avoid this sort of space where we actually sit in front of the mirror and see ourselves as we are. Yeah, so just thinking about how to practice and the importance of practicing waiting in the quiet dark to meet the light. Yeah, it's just so important. So you've got this Advent book, and it's not. I appreciate this book because it's not. I don't know that you would call it. Would you call it a devotional or just a journey? you know.
I don't know. People call it a devotional, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that language.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have Bible verses in it. It doesn't have prayers.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have any reference to God or Jesus until you get to the last page. Not because I'm very fond of Jesus and God as well. It's central to my life, my everyday. But it is a set of reflections. I guess I call it a book of reflections that point our hearts to the one great love that stands behind the whole universe,
Yeah.
including our creature kin.
Oh wow! I'm so glad you said that, because that's actually one of the things I really love about the book is that it's different in the way of, I don't feel like you're trying to spiritualize, I'm going to say, these creatures or this whole thing that I think is maybe a temptation for a lot of authors or preachers or whatever, when trying to, I'm going to say, use the natural world or something like that, if that makes sense. We always just are using so much of creation as some sort of spiritual metaphor. And I feel like this book, very kind of the opposite of that. It's kind of an ecological reading of like, hey, this is what these creatures are up to right now. What are you up to? Is sort of the inferred question in my mind as I'm reading. You're realizing, oh wow, like everything around me is behaving this way, but wow, what's up with humans over here behaving this way right now?
I do think it's a balancing act. The animals all do serve as metaphors for us, but that's not their primary function. They are primarily themselves. They're robust creatures in and of themselves. Meister Eckhart, his words, the Dominican of the 13th century, a mystic, his words open up the book. And he said, every single creature is a word of God and a book about God. So these creatures are given to us as guides. They have God within them. and they guide us. They certainly can instruct us on our own lives. But that's not their primary role here on the earth. They are simply to declare the glory of God in their innate selves with their inherent lives. So they're both. It's this, I wanted the book to be both just a celebration of the vibrancy of these creatures, and also to show us by metaphor, by analogy, what's ways that we might behave in a dark, cold season. And there are 24 of them. There's no formula. There's Turtle, yes, who buries herself in the mud and is so still she doesn't draw air into her lungs for 6 months. And then there are the fox squirrels that are dashing around just as actively, but with far fewer hours of daylight. And so they are having to adapt their lives as well. It's a book of adaptations for when the season is harsh and cold. And here are 24 different models, all of them good.
Yeah, that's the framing right there. Absolutely. That's really good. Yeah, I wonder if you'd maybe share a bit about how you went about choosing these particular ones. As you said, there's 24 of them, right? And it seems through my reading that, these are actual encounters that you've had along the way.
Our actual encounters, yes. I live at the edge, a 3-minute, 4-minute walk from a university ecosystem preserve. And so I simply walk into that ecosystem preserve and I watch the animals. When I was writing this book, I would go early in the mornings or at dusk when most of the animals are most active. And within that ecosystem preserve, I could look at all of the animals in the book, with the exception of 3, the black bear, the porcupine, and the lake trout. The black bear and the porcupine, we don't have in any number here in Southwest Michigan. They've been exterminated by our development. But in Northern Michigan, where I was born and raised, there are still black bears. And my father still owns, my family still owns 300, 400 acres of wooded land up there. So I can go up there and also see the porcupines up there. And the lake trout, the home where I grew up is just 5-6 blocks from Lake Michigan. So I could go to the piers of Lake Michigan, and I knew exactly how far out in the lake those lake trout were spawning and where they were congregating. So with the exception of 3 animals, I wrote the book by sitting with them, watching them right from my backyard almost. How did I choose which animals would be in the book? Well, it started with a simple recognition that I wanted representatives of all the animal classes. I wanted mammals, I wanted birds, I wanted reptiles, amphibians, and insects. And I wanted to alternate them. I didn't want 7 mammals in a row, followed by 3 insects, followed by 4 birds. I wanted to vary the animals, and I wanted representatives of each class of animal, and I wanted ones that I could pretty easily observe. So here they were. They kind of presented themselves. There were some I had to leave out and was sad to leave out, and there were others that clamored to be in the book. I'll tell you a funny story about that. I was coming near the end of the book. I had a deadline to had to get the rest of the manuscript to my publisher. And it was near Christmas, actually. It was this time of year. I had 3-4 more to write. I was at my prayer altar early one morning, and I was praying, but I wasn't praying. I was thinking about, okay, which animal am I going to write about today? Who's the next animal in the book? I don't know. And as I was praying, just outside the French doors that are alongside the place where I pray, I heard this tapping on the wooden step that leads out to the backyard. And so I opened my eyes and I turned my head, and there was a northern cardinal tapping on the wooden step outside the door. That has never happened before, and it's never happened since. That cardinal was tapping, and I thought, okay, you're asking to be in the book. You will be the next animal in the book.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
so cool.
I had a similar encounter with the red fox, which shows up 2 animals later in the book. So, partly at some points the animals ask to be in the book.
Oh, that's so cool. Have you read The Fox and I?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a good one. Maybe kind of reminded me of that. Uh, I wonder, do you have a favorite that you might be willing to share one of? If not, I could throw out some suggestions, but I'm more curious of what you kind of lean toward as ones you're
I
attracted
would
to.
I would say each year, I wouldn't call it a favorite. That's like picking a favorite child, but I would say that in different years, different of the animals have a more potent message for me. I remember clearly the year it was Firefly, whose adaptation needed to be my adaptation for that year, for that dark, cold season, thoroughly surprising me. I didn't see that coming. Other years, each year it's a different animal that comes to me. I think, though, I would like to read, if you'll let me read, The Painted Turtle. I always feel a special affection for the Painted Turtle because she was the first one to come to me for both the Advent calendar that I made for my boys and the first one in the book. She kind of set the tone and gave the title. And so I feel like I owe her a special homage.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So, well, thank you for asking me to read it.
Yeah,
I really love to read from the book.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Thank you.
Advent 1, Painted Turtle. The day is bright and warm for December 1, but the logs in the marsh pond are bare. Spring to summer into early fall, they served, on sunny days, as spa to a dozen or so painted turtles. I would see them basking splay-legged, stretching their leathery necks out full length, added for every luscious atom of sunlight and sun warmth. Out of sight now, they've not escaped the harsher cold that's coming. The water is maybe waist deep in this pond, but a murky soup clogged with roots and plants. One day in the fall, as water and air cooled at some precise temperature, an ancient bell sounded in the turtle brain. A signal. Take a deep breath. Each creature slipped off her log and swam for the warmer muck bottom. Stroking her way through the woven walls of plant stems, she found her bottom place. She closed her eyes and dug into the mud. She buried herself. And then, pulled into her shell, encased in darkness, she settled into a deep stillness. Her heart slowed and slowed, almost to stopping. Her body temperature dropped and stopped just short of freezing. Now, beneath a layer of mud, beneath the weight of frigid water and its skin of ice and skim of snow, everything in her has gone so still she doesn't need to breathe. And anyway, the iced-over pond will soon be empty of oxygen. Thunk in its bottom mud, for 6 months she will not draw air into her lungs. To survive a cold that would kill her, or slow her, so that predators would kill her, she slows herself beyond breath, in a place where breath is not possible, and waits. As ice locks in the marsh water and howling squalls batter its reeds and brush, beneath it all she waits. It is her one work, and it is not easy. Oxygen depletion stresses every particle of her. Lactic acid pools in her bloodstream. Her muscles begin to burn. Her heart muscle, too, a deadly sign. That acid has to be neutralized, and calcium is the element to do it. Out of her bones, then out of her shell, her body pulls calcium, slowly dissolving her structure, her shape, her strength. But to move to escape, requiring breath in a place where there is no oxygen, that would suffocate her. So, though she is dissolving, every stressed particle of her stays focused on the silver bead of utter quietude. It's this radical simplicity that will save her. And deep within it, at the heart of her stillness, something she has no need to name, but something we might call trust. That one day, yes, the world will warm again. And with it, her life.
My word, that's a mic drop right there. Thank you for sharing that, Gayle. That's so wonderful, and you just have such a gift with words, and it's just very poetic, and I think that's just such a gift. And so, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I love to read them, and I don't get enough opportunity. My family is tired of hearing
Oh
them.
man, I feel like I'm like just like thinking now. We need to do like a sitting, like a. Have you recorded this? Is it an audiobook?
It is an audiobook, yeah, from
Okay.
Audible.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I should have looked that up prior. So we'll have to link that. We'll definitely link that below. So good. Yes, all creation waits, friends, and it kind of says it in the title, right? It decentralizes from being an anthropocentric Advent, right? Advent is not all about just humans, right? Just as salvation isn't anthropocentric, but cosmic. And that's what I love about this, is that all creation is wrapped up within this redemptive story that does start here at the beginning of the Christian calendar and the Christian year.
I have I don't know if you know this. There's a children's version of All Creation Waits.
Oh, wonderful.
For 5 to 10-year-olds, and at the end of that book, at the last reflection in each book, the adult version and the children's version is focused on Jesus, the Christ. And in the children's version, I say, in a sense, all creation is still waiting. They waited for the Christ, who was that one who came among us and said, all creatures are our kin, are my kin. And the creatures are still waiting. They're still waiting for us to be like Jesus in that way also, to know that all creatures are our kin and to behave as if they're not natural resources for us to dispose of at our whim or will. They are our kin. And that's one of the things that the Jesus way shows us, that Christ himself shows us.
Absolutely. And that, and obviously it feels very Romans 8, right? Very creation groans, creation waits. Absolutely. And you have to see that every good nativity scene you'll ever see, right? Jesus is surrounded by these animals and these creatures. And I think it's one of those things that if you haven't necessarily given a lot of thought to, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's in the storytelling of this whole nativity here. And so, well, thank you so much for spending some time with us here in the beginning of this Advent season. And I'm just excited to journey through this Advent, and I hope that others will pick up a copy of this or check out the audio version, or but also venture outdoors and engage, like you said, in the biological Advent. And I think that's just a really wonderful way to put it.
Oh, it was such a pleasure to be with you, Caleb. Thank you for having me.
Friends, I hope that your Advent season is life-giving, even as it is potentially cold or dark where you are. May creation be your teacher this season as we wait for the coming Christ child.